Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for joining us today on behalf of the L. Douglas Wilder School of Government and Public Affairs. I would like to welcome you to our October installment of the Wilder School Alumni Lunch and Learn series. Today's series installment is entitled The Labor Landscape, Analyzing Workforce Challenges with Virginia Secretary of Labor, Bryan Slater. For those of you joining us for the first time, the Wilder School hosts monthly free virtual events like this one. Each session features change agents, thought leaders, and policymakers who provide insights and commentary on the relevant topics of the day. My name is Stephen Dozier. I am the Director of Development and Alumni Engagement here at the Wilder School. And before we get started, I'd like to share a few quick announcements. First and foremost, the Wilder School remains at the forefront of our field and continues to rise in the rankings. U.S. News and World Report ranks our school's public affairs program at number 39, placing us in the top 15% of more than 250 schools across the United States. And we hold top 40 rankings in 4 of our specialty programs, as you can see here. Now's the time for you or someone you know to earn a nationally ranked MPA degree in person or online from the Wilder School. Please follow the links in the chat for more information. Our spring 2024 application deadline is December 1st for our master's programs and December 15th for fall 24 doctorate applications. Please visit or share the link with colleagues, friends, or family who might be interested. Last but certainly not least, please RSVP now for tomorrow's Morton B. Gulag lecture at 3 p.m. in the VCU Commons with Zena Howard of Perkins and Will. She will be speaking on cultural expression in the built environment. There will be a reception that will immediately follow this lecture, and all are invited, so I hope to see you there. Please check the chat for more links to all of our updates. And now to introduce our moderator, Dr. Susan Gooden, our esteemed Dean of the Wilder School, to say a few more words and introduce.
Thank you so much, Stephen. Welcome, everyone. I always enjoy our Lunch and Learn events and look forward to learning so much more today about such a compelling topic on workforce. There are so many workforce issues that we're engaged in terms of having a engaged workforce. How do we structure work? What's the future of AI and work? I mean, there is just the list goes on and on. So I'm delighted that with the caliber of speakers that we've been able to have with this series, looking forward to hearing from Secretary Slater, who of course is the secretary under the Youngkin administration. He was also, I know, cabinet secretary in the Gilmore administration, and we had Governor Gilmore as a Lunch and Learn speaker a little while back. So we are very excited to have him. We know that it really underpins a lot of the work that we do in our school, in our school and with our classes in terms of thinking about how do we engage in this space. And to kick us off today as the moderator is Gina Barber. Gina is a senior consultant in our Center for Public Policy. She is an alum of the Wilder School. She has her MPA from us, and she has done considerable work herself in the area of workforce development here in the Commonwealth of Virginia. So I'm going to turn it over to you, Gina.
Thank you, Dean Gooden. Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you very much for joining us. As Dean Gooden said, my name is Gina Barber, and I work in the Wilder School Center for Public Policy. And some of the work that we do is directly in partnership with Secretary Slater. So I'm very excited and feel very privileged to be moderating this afternoon, and I'm looking forward to our conversation. And so Secretary Bryan Slater here with us this afternoon brings more than 20 years of experience with a wealth of knowledge and senior level experience leading public, nonprofit, and private sector organizations. And previously in Virginia, Secretary Slater served as the Secretary of Administration for Governor Gilmore, and also as Director of Administration under Attorney General Gilmore. So lots of experience in Virginia, but also experience at the federal Department of Labor. He served as Assistant Secretary for Administration and Management in the Federal Department, as well as he served as the White House liaison for the Department of Labor under President George W. Bush. So we're so excited to have him here. He's also a recipient of the 2007 Innovation in Government Award from the Wilder School, and he was also previously served on the Board of Visitors for VCU. So he's a longtime partner with us. So excited to have him here. Mr. Secretary, please take it away.
Look, it's make sure I'm off mute here. Yes. Look, thank you. Good afternoon. Thank you, Dean Gooden, Stephen, Gina, and really thank everyone for having me here today. I wanted to talk a little bit about workforce development and training and jobs in Virginia today. Virginia has over 250,000 open jobs right now, and we need to work to try to fill them all. Some of you all may have heard me speak before about the need to overhaul and consolidate workforce development, and about how it's spread across state government today, and how there's really been no centralized approach, at least from a statewide management perspective. Well, all of that is about to really change, and we've already started changing it. This past legislative session, we introduced bills to consolidate workforce development. They were actually passed. They've been signed by the governor and technically went into effect on July 1st. The legislation that we proposed and got passed creates a new state workforce agency called the Virginia Department of Workforce Development and Advancement. And this is something that's been needed and talked about for years. Governor Wilder's Secretary of Education, Jim Dyke, told me when we first met, started working on this, and I think February of 2022, that he tried to do the very same thing in 1990. His help this past year really was critical in helping us pass this bill and really made a difference. The legislation is going to be a key change in how we manage workforce development, because not only does it move about a dozen key workforce components into one central agency, things like WIOA Titles 1 and 3 and apprenticeships, it authorizes this agency and the secretary to work with agencies and help develop and require compliance with mandatory performance measures across all workforce programs across all of state government. Additionally, it charges the new agency with providing oversight and directing efficient implementation of workforce programs and training programs by cabinet secretaries and agencies who are responsible for those programs. And this is really key and is something that hasn't been in effect previously. And that is for one entity, agency, or really authorized individual to have the responsibility and authority to direct workforce programs across the executive branch, whether or not they fall under the Secretary of Labor, the new agency, or anybody else. The legislation authorizes us to establish baselines and to set metrics across every workforce program in the executive branch, and advise on and direct the implementation of those programs. Now, that doesn't mean we're going to be running workforce programs at the Department of Corrections or the Department of Social Services, but it does mean that we'll be working with those agencies and every workforce program in the state to establish metrics and measures and really create accountability to ensure that those metrics are being met and that they're improving year after year. This is really, this is going to be especially important in that it will give us, for the first time, really insight and transparency into which programs are actually working and which ones aren't. So we can look at scaling up and potentially propose giving more funding to those programs that are working, and try to fix or maybe even propose redirecting the funding from those programs that aren't working. This is going to be a key tool for us and for the legislature, because up to now, most information on performance has been really anecdotal at best. You know, our plan is to measure success as the number of people trained and the number of people placed into jobs or hired. You know, jobs filled is the key metric we really want to focus on. The real task is ahead of us, and that's combining the different divisions, building the agency, inventorying all of the programs, setting baselines, and then the metrics, and then measuring the results. It's not going to happen overnight, but our goal is to have the agency up and running and operating in the next 10 to 12 months. Getting this done and fully functional and operational before Governor Youngkin leaves office is critical if we want to solidify this and make this a long-term institutional change. We do, and we will get it done. This new agency will be engaged in outreach, specifically business outreach. We'll have an engagement and outreach office just for that purpose. And we're going to want to know what business needs. And we are going to want to work with business to help meet those needs. We're already exploring ideas to connect those in need of workers in the manufacturing industry in Central Virginia with those looking for work from programs like TANF, SNAP, and prisoner reentry programs. We want outreach to work both ways, a single place where leaders can go for resources or help, and an operation that is actively reaching out to entities to help meet their needs. Our focus is to train the business's needs. And as I like to say, who's hiring? Business. Who else is hiring? Not really anybody. Business hires the majority of people in this country. We want to supercharge our apprenticeship program too, and make it proactive and not just reactive. A program that not only works to sign up companies for apprenticeship programs, but an operation that actually helps recruit people to participate in those apprenticeship programs. We want to expand apprenticeship programs into non-traditional areas like IT, cyber, healthcare, teachers, cloud-based jobs, and even association-driven programs. Now, with regard to attracting and retaining talent, there are really, three ways to get new people into the workforce. One is to pull them off of the sidelines where they've left the workforce and get them trained and back into the workforce. Two is to retrain and upskill low wage and part-time, low or no wage or no skilled workers and get them into the in-demand top jobs pipeline. And three is to entice people from other states to leave where they are and come to work in Virginia. We do a fantastic job, in my opinion, of marketing Virginia to tourists and for tourism, trying to get people to come here for vacation because we have so much to offer. But we need to do the same thing for businesses and workers. We need to focus on and directly market to people to come to Virginia to live, work, raise a family, and retire. To do a better job, we need to engage in aggressive marketing. We know we live and work and raise families in the greatest state in the Union, but we take for granted that everyone else knows that too, and they don't. We need to do a better job of marketing what we have because we have so much, from great and diverse schools and universities like VCU and the Wilder School, colleges and community colleges, to low taxes. We have history everywhere you turn, culture, museums, parks, festivals, hiking, biking, swimming, surfing, skiing, you name it, it's all here. And Virginia is the place to live, work, and raise a family and retire. But most of all, we have jobs, good paying, long-term jobs for people that really want to work. And we need to aggressively market that fact across the country. If you want to work, there's a job here for you. One of the actions we took this past year to try to encourage people from other states to come to Virginia to work was the passage of universal licensing recognition. This has really kind of been overshadowed by the workforce bill, but it's still very important. What does universal licensing recognition means? It means that, until now, anyone moving from out of state with a professional license, somebody like a realtor or contractor or electricians, barbers, cosmetologists, or any of the other 80 plus D4 regulated professions would either have to take classes or training and then pass a test to be licensed to practice their non-health or non-medical profession in Virginia, even if they've been doing it for 20 or 30 years in another state. There's been no recognition of their license or experience in another state really at all up until now. With the passage of universal licensing recognition, we'll now accept the licenses of 85 different professionals from basically any other state, as long as it's close to an apples to apples comparison, and grant individuals who want to move here and live and work a license to practice their profession without any additional testing or training. This is going to be particularly helpful to military and law enforcement spouses and to people in other states that have qualifications and certifications who are looking for work. And it sends a clear message. Virginia wants you to come here to work, and we're going to make it easy for you to do so. This bill actually passed pretty much unanimously in both chambers, and honestly, I was surprised. I thought someone would object, but they didn't. Just to be clear, this is universal license recognition. This means we accept other states' licenses. It's not the same as reciprocity, which means other states accept our licenses. But honestly, we're focused on making it easier for people to come to Virginia to work from other states and work here. And I'm not really worried as much about making it easy for people to leave Virginia and go to work in other states. We will also want to expand. We want to look at expanding universal licensing recognition to other areas like healthcare, nurses, and other types of medical and medical support professions. I've been working and having discussions with the Health and Human Resources leadership, and we're going to be looking at ways to move these ideas beyond the concept phase into actual legislation. We've actually started having discussions in education now also on how to take advantage of the idea of universal licensing recognition, possibly for education and for teachers, and maybe even for law enforcement too, is from what I understand, there's a significant need there too. We're looking at ways to make it easier for licensed, skilled, trained professionals to teach high school students in key skilled trades without having to go through a full-blown teaching certification program. We're looking at ways to increase paid for-credit internship programs, looking at standardizing dual enrollment, and making students aware of the great paying careers and opportunities available in skilled and high skilled trades, starting as early as 6th grade. We're even looking at how we can work with those who have international training and get them certified and licensed to work in their fields of expertise in Virginia. We're working on how to maximize the opportunity pipeline for those individuals who are re-entering the workforce from corrections or who have been on social service benefits, and get them connected to and through training and start feeding them to employers who need workers. This requires some significant coordination, but we're working to make it happen and are dedicated to getting that done. One other action we just recently took was eliminating degree requirements and preferences for 90% of state classified or civil service type jobs. Now, experience, credentials, certifications, and training will be on an equal footing with a 4-year degree, and hiring managers will have the ability to choose, who they think is the best person to hire and who the best current candidate is based on multiple factors, not just on who has a degree. We have over 20,000 open state jobs. This should give everyone an equal opportunity to compete. So, where are we right now? We have more than 225,000 more people employed than we did when we got here in January of last year. We're ranked the #1 best place to retire by Wallet Hub, displacing Florida, if you can believe that. We have the highest employment and labor force in Virginia history. We have a labor participation rate that's higher than it's been since 2012 at 66.7%. And we have an unemployment rate of 2.5%, which is near a historic low. We're #5 in the nation for job growth since the start of the Youngkin administration. We were just recently ranked the #2 top state in the nation for business by CNBC, who also scored us as part of that survey as the #1 state in the nation for education. We were ranked #1 in the nation for customized workforce, and we're ranked #1 or #2 in the nation for site development. As I said, we're standing up the new agency now, but we're already working with pools of untrained workers to get them to training groups so that we can start funneling them to companies that need workers. A lot of these potential workers have some barriers, but we're working to try to work with them to get them trained and work ready. We look forward to exploring new ground and ideas to boost the pipeline of workers and to meet Virginia's business needs and build on the 225,000 plus jobs that have actually been added since Governor Youngkin took office. Not going to speak for a full 30 minutes. I'll stop now, and I know we've got some questions, so I'll give you all an opportunity to ask the questions that you had originally, and then we can go into group questions.
Excellent. Thank you very much, Secretary Slater. It's always great to hear what's going on in state government that's going to directly impact Virginians on their day-to-day, and work and your life at your job is certainly a huge part of that. So yes, I have a couple questions for you.
Sure.
And then we'd love to hear from questions from participants today. If you have any questions for the Secretary, please do share them with us. So one of the first questions I had, Mr. Secretary, is you talked about one of the many goals the new workforce agency has is to expand knowledge of apprenticeships and access to apprenticeships. If you met somebody who didn't really know what apprenticeships were or how they're different from internships or other on-the-job training opportunities, what would you say are kind of the benefits of an apprenticeship and how it's different from other things they may have heard of before?
Well, I think apprenticeships are a great way to learn skilled trades and a number of trades. But I think the key points is that apprenticeships are where someone will train you. They'll pay to train you. They'll pay you while they're training you. They're likely going to give you a job and pay you when they're done training you. And you're not going to have $200,000 in student debt. And in a lot of the trades that are out there now, after a 3 or 4 year apprenticeship, you're coming out making $60,000, $70,000, $80,000 a year, 3 years after high school.
I think that it's a great opportunity for a lot of folks to know about, considering a lot of the conversations that are being had about higher education and workforce in Virginia, and to know that there are lots of opportunities for folks. It's not one path. There are multiple paths to a great life in Virginia.
That's one of the things that we're trying to get people to understand is there are multiple pathways to success. And that hasn't been stressed enough recently. It was for years, people were told, you've got to go to college or you're not going to be a success. College is an excellent pathway to success, but there are other pathways too. And that's in IT and the technology fields and skilled trades. And those jobs are in high demand right now.
And speaking of that, you mentioned a few industries that are in high demand and have these training opportunities. Are there any newer industries that folks might not have realized are growing quickly and are hiring that we should keep an eye out for any folks who are looking to change careers or to start a career?
Every 2 years we do what's known as a top jobs list. And what that top jobs list is the top in-demand jobs in Virginia by region. And that'll be coming out shortly. But it's key areas. It's in Northern Virginia. It's IT. There are 120,000 open IT jobs in Northern Virginia. In the Tidewater area, it tends to be more focused on shipbuilding and ship repair. It's a lot of the skilled trades. Newport News Shipbuilding will tell you they'd hire 5,000 welders right now if they could. Across Central Virginia and Southside Virginia, it's a lot of manufacturing. There's a huge need for manufacturing positions as more and more businesses come in. And these are good paying jobs. I think that one of the myths that needs to be dispelled is that, factory jobs and manufacturing jobs, today are more like working in a clean room than they are working in some sort of a 19th century Charles Dickens blast furnace type of factory. And I don't think that's as well known as it needs to be. They're not dirty jobs. They're high-tech jobs because everything is so mechanized. And if you go and look at places like, just in the Richmond area, Mondelez, which people are like, okay, what's Mondelez? Mondelez is what used to be known as Nabisco, and they basically make Oreos and Chips Ahoy and things of that nature. They're $30, $35 an hour jobs or more. And for instance, they cover 100% of employees' healthcare. So, and healthcare is one of the biggest drivers of costs for families today. And they offer 100%, they cover 100% of the cost of their employees' healthcare. So, they're the type of things that we need to do a better job of communicating.
Absolutely. And as you say, doing a better job of communicating. Is there anything you can share from the new workforce agency on their plans to do a better job of communicating where people can find jobs or find services, find good people to hire? Where can they go?
Our goal is, and since the legislation just passed in July, there's a transition where we move all of these pieces over. The first piece moved over the 1st of October, and that was the Economic Information Division from the VEC, which does all of the BLS type of data. Apprenticeships moves over starting on November 15th. But ultimately, where we want to be is a single portal where everyone can go for all things workforce, be it for jobs, for training, for upskilling, for apprenticeships, even for internships. North Carolina and a number of other states have. North Carolina has NC Works. Montana has Montana Works. A number of states have insert name of state Works as the single portal where everyone goes for workforce information. In Virginia, we've got over 40 different websites. Each of the individual local workforce development boards has their own website. And if you're in one, you can't jump to the other. Now, if you're in the main portal, you can go to a different one, but that's not how we need to be operating. We need a single place where everyone can go for workforce information, and that's where we're headed.
Excellent. As someone who's worked on a variety of workforce projects, yes, I've seen all of the different websites and all have great information, but if you don't know they're there,
Right.
you don't have the information.
Right.
So for the folks joining us today who are interested in at least finding one of those websites to get them started, is there a starting point right now while the new workforce agency is starting up? Is there a website or a place that they can start dipping their toe into the different services that Virginia offers them for workforce?
Yeah, you can go to the CareerWorks website, or you can go to, we have the initial landing page of virginiaworks.gov up, I believe. I need to see if that's actually active yet. That's the brand that we're going to be driving and pushing everybody towards, is just virginiaworks.gov. Either that or CareerWorks will be where to go for right now.
Yes, and we can put this in the chat. For right now, the website that's definitely live is virginiacareerworks.com. So Virginia spelled out careerworks.com. And Mr. Secretary, can you repeat the link of the website that we hope that will be live now, if not very soon?
virginiaworks.gov.
virginiaworks.gov. Perfect.
Not VA Works. Virginia spelled out.
Virginia.
We don't want to send people to a veterans website somewhere. So
yes.
Virginia spelled out works.gov.
Excellent. Thank you for sharing that.
Sure.
All right, thank you for everyone who's submitting questions. We're seeing them come in here, so I'll take a look and see what else you'd like to ask. You had mentioned earlier when you were speaking that Virginia is topping the lists of for workforce lists and places to do business. Is there something that that Virginia is doing that is some of the reasons we're at the top of these lists, something that we have been doing that we want to continue doing?
Yeah, I think having a business-friendly environment is what is key. I mean, as I said, who's hiring people? Business. What you want to do is you want to make it advantageous for business to come here, because if they don't, they're not going to bring the jobs with it. We've brought in, Boeing, we've brought in, Lego, we've brought in a lot of different companies across the Commonwealth in the last 20 months, and we want to continue to do that. But, it's a combination of bringing in new businesses, having a business-friendly environment, which is conducive to companies coming here, having a focus on site preparation, because, putting more funds into and being better prepared for companies to come here, like having sites and pads developed for large companies. That's something that we put more money into the budget last year to make it easier for companies to come here and to basically clear the land, put down a pad, put in the infrastructure and the roads and the sewers and everything else, and have it ready for a company to come in and just start building. One area that we need to start focusing on more is housing. When you bring businesses in, you've got to have a place for people to live. And we need to now focus on housing and making sure that we've got sufficient housing inventory for new people that are coming into Virginia to work, or for the new hires.
Wonderful, thank you. It's always great to know about the larger context. A question that's come in from our participants is, they're excited to hear about the all of the different pathways to a great life in Virginia and to have a great career in Virginia. They're also wondering, how is Virginia continuing to promote the importance of higher education alongside all of the many other paths they could be taking?
Yeah, I think higher ed speaks for itself, and it does a great job. The universities and the Commonwealth do a great job of promoting themselves. You know, we're very fortunate in Virginia that we have so many top-notch universities spread all across the Commonwealth. You know, a lot of states have the university system, so to speak, where they have one, 800-pound monster that drives everything in the state, like the University of Georgia or the University of North Carolina at Greensboro or at Charlotte or at whatever. We have a variety of different colleges, and Chev continues to market them, and you all continue to market yourselves. And I think that's really, really key. You can go from, schools, larger schools like UVA, Virginia Tech, VCU, to, smaller schools with smaller class sizes like Radford, and Longwood, to up and coming universities that have really expanded, like Christopher Newport and George Mason, to James Madison, to, I could rattle them all off. I don't know that I would get them all, but there's so many choices, and they're all great choices, and we need to continue to market them. One of the key things that we're focused on, though, is trying to work with those schools to make sure that we do everything we can when we bring students here, especially students from out of state, to do as much as we can to prepare them for the workforce and to keep them in Virginia. It doesn't help us a lot if we have students come to school here, get educated here, learn everything here, and then go to work, in Chicago or New York or LA or Dallas. We want to keep people here. And so we need to focus, and universities need to focus on taking steps to try to keep as many of their graduates in Virginia as possible, because we have great opportunities here.
It's a great point, and something personally for me. I'm originally from Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, but I came to Virginia to go to college, and Virginia kept me here because I was able to get a job.
Good.
Good. So connecting those in higher education then to good careers here in Virginia where they don't have to leave is something that I think Virginia does well already, but there's always opportunities to expand, especially with new industries that we're seeing coming to Virginia over the years. Are there any kind of, I know we've seen in the last few years, Amazon coming to Northern Virginia. Are there other industries or other opportunities for employment to keep people in Virginia that we should keep our eyes on in other parts of the Commonwealth, in Richmond and other places?
Yeah, the Virginia Economic Development Partnership drives economic development in the Commonwealth, and they are constantly working on bringing companies to Virginia. There have been a couple of announcements this past week. If you go to the VEDP website, you can actually see all of the different announcements of who's coming to Virginia, who's expanding in Virginia, who's bringing more jobs to Virginia, and it's literally everywhere. Jefferson Labs down in Newport News just had an announcement the other day of they want a large federal grant, and they'll be expanding. The Navy is doing a lot of things now, and has just recently announced some initiatives down in Danville with the Institute. And so there are things happening in every corner of the Commonwealth.
Excellent. And for anyone who wants more information on the Virginia Economic Development Partnership, their website is vedp.org. And we can put that in the chat, but that's vedp.org, the Virginia Economic Development Partnership. Well, it's great to know that there's a lot of opportunity in all corners of the Commonwealth. One question that is coming in from our participants, they want to know more about the new workforce agency, which is great because I'm also curious to know more. And I know that we're just getting started, but from what you know now today, how do you envision this agency kind of changing the current institutional setting, what we had previously for workforce and what things look like down the road, but probably not just under your secretariat, but partnerships with the Secretariat under Education, all of those highly connected agencies. And how is that changing, and how are you all working together?
This is really about breaking down silos. You know, what we've had until now is everybody has kind of done their own thing in their silo. And, you know, it's like, well, I report to the Secretary of Health and Human Resources, or I report, you know, to the Secretary of Public Safety. And so that's who I have to answer to. You know, the legislation actually authorizes this agency to direct workforce development programs and to establish measures and metrics on every workforce program in the executive branch. So because the law allows that, they're, for lack of a better way of putting it, they're going to have to deal with us, you know, because we're going to be coming to them, knocking on their door saying, okay, what are you doing? What are you producing? How many jobs are you filling? You know, and we're going to set baselines for you, and we're going to set metrics for you. And really, it's also about standardizing metrics and measures. You know, when I first got here, I would ask people, a number of people that says, well, how do you define success? And the response I would get was, you know, oh, well, number of people that we've trained. And I'm like, okay, how many of those people did you get a job? The response I got was, oh, we don't measure that. And I'm like, why not? That's the ultimate goal. The ultimate end goal is getting people employed. And so we've got to be involved in not only training, but we've got to be involved in placement across the board. And different programs need to coordinate with other programs. The left hand and the right hand need to know what each other are doing. And, you know, one of the things that we've discussed and will be launching is bringing all of the programs together on a regular basis and having them all sit in the same room. And just go around and go, what are you working on? What are you working on? What are you working on? Maybe you ought to be talking to him, or she ought to be talking to her, you know, that type of interaction, and basically start competing with each other and start communicating, collaborating, and coordinating what, you know, the programs are doing with each other. That's where our ultimate focus is. And we'll be moving the 12 or so different components over on a scheduled phase. Like I said, apprenticeships comes over on November 15th. The bulk of the rest of the programs at the Virginia Employment Commission move over on January 15th. And right now, the programs at the Virginia Community College System that'll transfer or scheduled to transfer on March 15th. We'll be building out the website, and this is all technically a functional transition right now, because the bill passed, you know, which authorizes the creation of this agency, but there's no budget yet. That comes this legislative session. So what this is for us is a functional transition to have all of these entities start reporting to the new leadership now and over that scheduled time, and then actually move everybody into a new space and centralize them and put them all in one place after the 1st of July. You know, one of the reasons that we structured it the way that it was, that we have, as opposed to just creating a huge workforce agency where we put every workforce program into that workforce agency, is all that would do was create another super agency that would become a bureaucracy. And we looked at it and said, you know, Department of Corrections is going to do a better job running the workforce programs in prisons than we would. Social Services is going to do a better job of working with individuals on SNAP and TANF programs and public assistance programs, and getting them the initial help that they need before they start to focus on their workforce needs. You know, you've got to have housing, you've got to have food, you've got to be able to live before you can get to work. And so, you know, us being able to work with them on helping to drive and set metrics and measures on their workforce programs, where they are and where the point of entry is for the individuals who need help, is really what we think is the best model. We only found one state that had put everything into one place, and that was Utah. And you know, Utah is a lot different than Virginia. It's smaller, it's one party control, it has a 2-term governor, And if we tried to do that, I really do think we'd set ourselves up for failure. And so that's one of the main reasons we chose not to do that, not to create it. The idea here is to get everybody working together and to not create another bureaucracy.
Wonderful. We look forward to
Sure.
hearing even more as that transition happens and we see it in real time. Another question from our participants is, how can the average Virginian help? Like, can we do anything to make this agency even more successful? Is there a way we can participate or join in this process?
Well, you can tell everybody to go to the new agency once we're up and running, and when anybody needs training. But really, what the general public can do is really start talking about apprenticeships and skilled trades and multiple pathways. There are three key people or groups of people we need to have conversations with, and that's parents, guidance counselors, and students. And they need to be educated that there are multiple pathways. And like I said, I went to Ferrum and I went to University of Richmond and I was on the board of VCU. So, fully support, our institutions of higher education. But as I said, that's not the only way to success. And people learn differently. Some people learn by sitting in a classroom. Some students, can't wait to get out of the classroom, don't learn well in a classroom, and learn better doing hands-on work. And promoting that as opposed to just shuffling them off to, somewhere is what we really need to focus on. When I was in high school, half the guys in my class, and it was all guys then, got on a bus and went to the technical center at 10:30 in the morning. That doesn't happen, like that anymore all across the Commonwealth. Then you had a balance. You had people who were going to college and you had people that were going into skilled trades, and we were able to meet the needs of all employers. Now we've spent 40 years basically saying, there's only one pathway to success, and we've got skilled trades people and firms screaming for workers and paying darn good wages. I'm used to and grew up in an environment where we basically had 5 people for every 2 jobs, available. Now we basically have 2 people for every 5 jobs. We've got to grow the size of the labor force. And that's getting people into more skilled trades, getting people into IT, getting people who are going to college, the training and experience, to get jobs. When I spoke to the Council of Presidents, I said, look, learning for learning's sake and being enlightened and, the classics and everything, I learned all of that. That's very important. But unless, every one of us has a trust fund that we're going to live off for the rest of our lives, we all need to work, and what we've got to do is we've got to prepare people to be successful in the workforce and to be able to get a job. One of the things that we're going to be pushing to is, more internships and hopefully paid internships, and internships need to be, a tool to where both the employer and the employee or the intern get something of value. And I'm being a little flip here, but the days of, a free intern to make copies and get coffee, that needs to be over. We need to be giving interns real work experience to prepare them, for the workforce. I was speaking at an event yesterday, and there was a lady from JMU who stood up and said one of the problems that, her graduates are running into is everybody's looking for somebody with experience. Well, if they're not getting, experience through internships or through apprenticeships or something else, then that makes them less competitive. So it's what I've been saying too. We've got to focus on training and placement. And if that means we need to change the model, the model of here's your degree, here's your certificate, pat on the back, go knock them dead. That's not working now. We've got to get involved in placement also. And really, that should be easier than I think people think it is, because one of the keys, to educating and training people successfully is working with businesses and training the business's needs and involving business directly in curriculum development, to make sure that we're training the business's needs and that we're getting it right. And if you're doing that, if you're having conversations and talking to businesses and you're involving businesses in curriculum development, then it's not a far leap to say, okay, we're training them to your specifications. How many of them are you going to hire? And that goes for everybody from welders to accountants. And that needs to happen both, in skilled trades, community college, and in higher ed.
Absolutely. And that leads me to where this conversation seems to be headed also, is you've talked about, the emphasis on training people for jobs and careers. And you've talked about some industries and some opportunities, top jobs that are hiring like crazy, and we want to fill those jobs. And some questions coming in from our participants are asking, what is being done or what will be done to make sure that those top jobs or those really good jobs right now continue to remain good jobs, especially in light of, we're hearing a lot about AI and more options for telework and hybrid work. So with all of these social factors impacting us in our work life, what is the new agency or what is your secretariat looking to do to ensure that these jobs remain good for Virginians?
Well, I think it's less about what, we can't make business keep a job. The market is going to drive, a lot of that. But the data that we get, the top jobs data does two things. It tells us what the top jobs are now, and it tells us what the top jobs are projected to be based on the information that we have over the next 3, 5, 6, years. So that gives us, some insight into, where things are headed. I don't think anyone can predict, with certainty. It's like, well, the job that you have today is going to be relevant in 30 years. If there's anybody close to my age, on the call, 40 years ago, you'd open up the newspaper and there were jobs for mag card operators that would fill 3 pages. My guess is most people don't even know what a mag card operator is now. So, markets change, but what we want to do is focus on those top jobs because we think that they are going to continue to be viable. With regard to the social issues that you brought up, telework and hybrid work and stuff like that, and AI, I don't think telework's going away, but I'm not sure it's going to remain, as it was, really during the pandemic, because that was out of necessity. I think it's going to depend on the job and how the job needs to be done. There's value in face-to-face collaboration and in process discussion and conflict resolution and working things out that can't necessarily always be done, by text, email, or Zoom. I think telework is going to continue to morph and develop. And, who knows, it could be a situation where people spend, a week in the office, a week at home. Right now it's the focus is, it's like, well, 2 days at home, 3 days in the office, 5 days at home. Well, I can work better, at home. Well, you might be able to work better at home, but the needs overall of the business might need you to be in the office some. And I'm just being, honest. It's like they're the ones paying you. So it's finding that sweet spot, and I think it's going to take a little while to actually get to fully develop as to what the needs are. And I do think it's going to vary depending on depending on what the needs, are. And it's still early. When you go back and you look at, how computers developed in the workplace, how the internet usage developed, how cell phones developed, how they're taken for granted and used now are a lot different than they were when, first when they first came about. And I think the same thing with, AI. I think, artificial intelligence can actually be, a real tool and help with regard to how we all work. But I think it's really important to set ground rules now, on AI and decide what we will use it for and what we won't use it for. It has a huge potential, but it has huge risks too, and, I'll go back to one thing that I remember from when I was younger is when they first started having the ability to clone things. There was talk about cloning everything, when they cloned a sheep and they started cloning, organs, and everybody just kind of said, okay, let's stop here for a second. We're not going to clone people. We're going to clone organs to help people, but we're not cloning people. The point I'm making is, they laid the ground rules down early and agreed, as a society, what we were going to, what and how we were going to use cloning and what and how we weren't. And I think doing that same thing with AI is going to be really important. What we are going to use AI for and what we're not going to allow it to be used for. I think we've already seen some, challenges with AI that, I'm not an expert by any stretch, but, with celebrities being copied and that, people, it's not really them, but it looks like them, to people citing briefs, in legal cases and that actually just don't exist, but that made perfect sense. So, I think that's just going to take a lot of development. I think it's going to take a while, but I think it's key to getting it worked out now, as opposed to having to deal with problems that it creates later.
Great points. And in that line of thinking, you said there needs to be, the groundwork laid, the guardrails placed around AI in terms of workforce development. Do you see that as something that your secretariat would play a part in terms of state legislation, or does that need to kind of start at the federal level first? What are you kind of seeing there?
I think it is still developing. I think AI, just like, if you remember, when they first started talking about robotics, they're like, everybody's running around, hair on fire, robots are going to replace us all. Well, no, they haven't replaced us all. Somebody's got to program the robots. Somebody's got to, somebody's got to write the code for them. Somebody's got to, fix them when they start messing up. Robotics automation, there's a whole field, in that, and people that go through the system to try to figure out where the glitch is that's making some machine, in one of the factories we toured, making, the bags, every 15th bag wrong. Well, it's finding that. So, that's going to take a little bit to develop, but I think on the state level, we're going to start looking at it, whether it ends up in my shop or in the Secretary of Labor's shop, or whether, the Attorney General starts dealing with it first, or where. I think it's, honestly, it's just a little early to tell right now for me.
Understood. Yeah, I know there's all of our different levels of government are grappling with it. So I'm always intrigued to see which level takes a stab at it first. So as Virginia is progressing with the new workforce agency and some of the other changes that your shop is implementing, it'll be great to see what happens definitely in our next General Assembly session, which is coming up. So
in short, I don't think we can just sit back and wait for the federal government to do something. I think we need to, start messaging and talking about it now.
Wonderful. And speaking of talking about it now, yes, if there are any other questions, we have time for one more question. And I know that there was some questions from our participants asking about career opportunities and job rates in criminal justice. So Secretary Slater, if you happen to know, feel free to interject, but Dean Gooden, if you happen to have a quick word, since we do have a program in criminal justice here, feel free to interject as well.
I'll always defer to the secretary first. So
Go ahead. If you've got a criminal justice program, talk about that.
No, I would just say that I saw the question in criminal justice, and you know, one of the things, speaking of the internship opportunities, we have what are called the Wilder Fellowships, where students work for 9 months, graduate students in a state agency, and the Department of Corrections has been an agency that we've partnered with for a number of years in that regard. So I do think that a lot of the career opportunities, the internship tracks, the experiential learning that Secretary Slater did such a great job outlining is certainly a space that the Wilder School is deeply committed to and trying to do our part.
And my quick question is I'm curious too about the question about criminal justice, if that was about criminal justice as a profession, or if that had to do with, you know, recidivism issues and things of that nature. You know, Virginia is number 2 in the nation, second lowest recidivism rate in the nation, which means people who are actually recommitting and going back to prison, we're the second lowest in the country, and we're very proud of that. But we want to continue to make it easier for individuals who are reentering society to get meaningful, good, livable wage, family sustaining jobs. And that's a commitment to all of us. To me, that's not a political issue. That's an economic issue. And the more people we actually have working, the better.
You're here.
Excellent. Thank you, Dean Gooden, and thank you, Secretary Slater. Secretary, if you have one final plug, just to anything else that we, once this webinar is over and we go to our normal lives, what's one thing that we can do to continue advancing workforce development in Virginia? Yeah,
tell people, especially young people, and especially young people in distressed areas or disadvantaged areas in both rural and urban areas in Virginia, that there are multiple pathways to success where they can be making $50,000, $60,000, $70,000, $80,000 a year in the next 2 or 3 years through apprenticeship programs.
Excellent advice.
Thank you very much.
Yes, thank you so much, Secretary Slater.
No, thanks. It's a pleasure. And I saw where Jim Dyke is on here. So, Mr. Secretary, thank you for all of your help over the past 20 months. Couldn't have done it without you.
Thank you.
Yes, thank you, Secretary Slater. Thank you, Gina Barber. Thank you, Dean Gooden. And thank you to all of you who attended. Thank you to our communications team in the background, navigating the program. We are so appreciative of everyone for joining us for their lunch and engaging in such a great discussion led by Secretary Slater. Before we go, I just want everyone to save the date for our next Lunch and Learn, which is on November 15th with Dr. Bob Holsworth at 12 p.m., political scientist and managing partner at SideSmart, for his talk on the Virginia elections. So all eyes on Virginia, analyzing election 2023. If any of you have attended his talks in the past, this should be a very engaging discussion, and we're looking forward to it here at the Wilder School. Until then, please enjoy the rest of your week. And again, thank you all for joining us. Have a great day.
Thank you all very, very much. It's been a pleasure.